What do you get if you take 1 part Rush, 1 part Metallica and 1 part Iron Maiden, put them in a mixing pot with the likes of Yes and Genesis, mix them all together, what do you get? You get Dream Theater, and that's the band that we're going to be reviewing for their best album ever, Images and Words. Let's get ready to prog rock. Welcome back to Rocker's Beer Review, and today we're going to be doing a rock review of the album Images and Words by Dream Theater. Now, if you like prog rock and prog metal, then you've probably heard of Dream Theater. If you haven't, then keep on listening and you'll realise that this is one of the best albums of the 1990s. Obviously as well, because this is a beer channel, we're going to be reviewing this beer. This is by Pomona Island. It's the last beer out of the bottle shop beers that we've got for August. It's called Style, Control, Damage and Aggression. And I thought that this title of this beer pretty much sums up this album by Dream Theater. So we're going to start opening the beer, start drinking it. I'll give you some initial thoughts. Then we'll do the rock review and then we'll do the scores for the beer at the end. Okay, so let's get this beer out the glass, just in anticipation of the rock review that's about to come. So, Pomona Island do lots of great beers. They're a brewery based in Salford. Yeah, and we've had a few of their beers before, and they've all been pretty good. This one is an IPA. It's a double dry hopped IPA. It's got Simcoe, Strata, Citra, and Mosaic. So 4 different types of hops in there. Beer in the glass, beautiful, lovely yellow haziness. We've got a 2-finger head there. Quite a lot of carbonation there in rising up the glass. But it's quite a frothy head. It's a sort of slightly off-white head, so you know, a bit different. But you can see that. Look, you know, move that out of the way. You can see quite a lot of bubbles there compacting together. Anyway, let's get some aromas. Oh, it's a real lovely, juicy, fruity aromas there. Yeah, we've got everything in there. We've got a mango, we've got a pineapple, we've got grapefruit, we've got citrus. Bit of orange, lemon and lime. Oh, it's got all the aromas that you expect from a good IPA, and I'm really looking forward to this. It's getting the taste buds going. So, cheers everyone. Yeah, that's quite a bit special. That really a nice combination of flavours there. You're getting the mango in there. A little bit of sort of passion fruit and papaya, and the pineapple, although it's quite subtle. It's not as some IPAs and some pale ales that we've tried. You can see that pineapple sort of always overly dominates in terms of the flavour, but this is just a real sort of tropical fruit bowl of flavours there. I'm just yeah, it's a little bit of grapefruit, but it's quite subtle, and it's again more that sort of pink grapefruit, not overly sharp, but just there, giving it a little bit more of an edge, a little bit more of a bite on the back end. Very little bitterness. It is quite dry though, which I really like in a beer. I think it's really great. Really well balanced. It's got a mouthfeel, even though there's a lot of carbonation. You do get a little bit of that carbonation going around your mouth, but it's still quite a soft mouthfeel. And I think, you know, Pomona Island do know how to make their beers. Yeah, that's a cracking beer, that. And I think as IPAs go, it's a great example. 6.5%, and it's in a 440ml can. Okay, so that's my initial thoughts on the beer. I'll do proper scores for that in a moment, but I don't want this video to go on too long because the crux of this video is all about Dream Theater. So let's get started, shall we? This album is actually one of my top 10 albums of all time. And although it's nearly 30 years old, it's as great to listen today as it was when I first heard it way back in 1992 on its release. There's no other album that has really shaped my current music sort of taste when I realised that, you know, I really love progressive rock and progressive metal. It was a landmark album, not only for me, but also for the genre at the time, within progressive metal. It's the album that it really superbly infused the sort of 1970s prog rock of the bands like Yes and Kansas and Genesis and to some extent Rush, with the sort of 80s metal of Metallica and Iron Maiden. I can still remember visiting my local music shop when I first was introduced to this album. It was 1992. Grunge was sort of like dominating a lot of the sort of music at the time, but really it still hadn't really made a mark on me. I wasn't really into the sort of grunge scene, but the usual sort of heavy metal and hard rock releases were sort of slightly dying out. And I asked the guy, I knew the guy who worked at the record shop. He was a fellow metal fan like myself, if he had any recommendations, if there's any sort of new bands coming out. And he mentioned this new band called Dream Theater, one that I'd never heard of before. They're an American band, but they had quite a different sound, and he said, "Oh, you should give it a try." He said to me that they like Genesis and Iron Maiden really, and I thought, well, there's two bands that I really like, not necessarily sort of infuse those sounds together. But I looked at the album cover; it looked suitably sort of metal. Had lots of sort of songs that were sort of 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 minutes long. And he put on the opening track, "Pull Me Under," and after listening to that, it's all I needed to know that this was going to be an album for me. What I didn't know at the time was that my cousin, who moved to New York in the early 80s, he lived on Long Island in New York. He actually went to school with the guitarist of Dream Theater, John Petrucci, a fact that I only learnt a few years ago. So it's a sort of strange sort of circle, a strange fact that. So let's do the track by track for this album. So as I said, we start off with the song "Pull Me Under," and it's here you really sort of get the full melting pot of the other bands that it sort of mixes. So it starts with a nice sort of clean guitar and a really sort of gentle drum beat, but then there's a lot of synths coming in. Kevin Moore, the keyboard player, brings in a lot of synths. He actually wrote this song, and then it explodes with this sort of massive crunchy sort of riff, which sounds straight out of the sort of James Hetfield copybook, and that's where I sort of get the Metallica comparisons there. The drumming, though, is definitely from the sort of prog rock masters like Neil Peart or Phil Collins, but there's huge amounts of keyboards in there as well. So that's not something you would associate with bands like Iron Maiden and Metallica. James LaBrie, this was his first hit. Dream Theater had an album before this with a different singer. This was his first album, and his voice is absolutely spectacular. There's lots of little time changes as you expect from prog rock, and although it comes in at 8 minutes, it's probably the most straight ahead rock song on the album. John Petrucci guitar, had some great little flourishes, and I remember at the time it did remind me a little bit of Steve Vai's playing. Knowing that this guy was a great virtuoso guitar player. And the whole sort of song is really sort of fleshed out with Kevin Moore's brilliant keyboard playing. So that's the first song, and it's a great one. When we get into the second song, though, it completely changes pace. It can be best described, I suppose, as prog metal meets Kenny G. This is mainly due to a lot of little breaks and saxophone solo, which, on paper sounds a little bit cheesy, but it really works. This is progressive music, so let's face it, anything goes really. And if this song had been given any radio time, or and appeared in the charts, I think it would have been, a really great top 10 hit, because it's a really great ballad, and it's just a beautiful song, really good song. And saxophones, saxophone solos, you just don't get them in songs these days, but back in the 80s they were in, and this early 90s song has got it. Track 3 is called "Take the Time," and it changes all again. It comes across as a little sort of prog funk really, with a little odd time beat to begin with, but really showcases the talents of the bass player John Myung, with some, it's got some great bass runs and a little bit of bass slapping as well. This is what Red Hot Chili Peppers would sound like if they went prog. So we've got great chorus throughout the song. James LaBrie really sort of shows his full range with some really sort of great sort of screams and shouts and even a little bit of rapping. his vocals, I think, are a little bit, this is the comparison, I think, with Bruce Dickinson and Iron Maiden. He's got a real sort of great baritone voice. But the song has got loads of time changes. It's about 7 or 8 minutes. It's another sort of fairly long song, but it never sort of outstays its welcome. You never think, oh, this is going too much. It's quite a good. It's catchy, and every time you listen to it, you get something else from it. Track 4 then starts, quite slow, and it's pretty much starting off as a ballad. It's called Surrounded. So the ballad starts. It's similar to Another Day, but there's no saxophone in this one. But in the middle, it sort of picks up and really gets going before it sort of slows back down again to that sort of ballad. It's this is an album really with no filler on it. It's all killer, no filler. But if there was a weak track on the album, I think it would be this one. Maybe you disagree. Have you heard the album? What's your favourite song on this album? Side 2, if you had a side 2, if you had it on tape. Metropolis Part 1, The Miracle and the Sleeper. Now, this song is as epic and progressive as the title sounds. It's all 9 and a bit minutes of full prog rock, prog metal, sort of showcasing all the musicians involved. You've got great heavy riffing, you've got solos, you've got great prog drumming in it throughout, and like James LaBrie again, he's on great form. A great song. Don't ask me what it's about because I have no idea, but it just sounds really great. This follows with a song Under a Glass Moon, and for me, when I mentioned the Steve Vai sort of comparisons for John Petrucci for the guitarist, but it looks like it sounds like they've actually roped him in for this whole song, because it really sounds like Steve Vai is playing on it. It really is an amazing song. The guitar sounds on this are absolutely brilliant, and it's probably the heaviest and fastest song on the album too. And for me, the solo is out of this world. It's probably one of John's best solos ever. You should give it a listen, even if it's just for the solo. He really does know how to shred. Blends dark and the heavy with a soft and light, which to me is what makes a prog rock masterpiece, really. Then we've got the penultimate song on the album, called Wait for Sleep. This is a sort of little 2-minute piano-led vocal ditty, which really beautifully sort of segues into the last song, which is probably one of my favourite Dream Theater songs of all time. It's called Learning to Live. It's the longest song on the album, and it really shows how to write a prog rock masterpiece. 11.5 minutes, I think it is, in terms of its time, and it's got more twists and turns than a twisty-turny thing. It's the best way I can describe it. Every musician is at the top of their game, but especially John Mung, again, who plays bass, really shines, really sort of drives the track forward. And in fact, he wrote the lyrics, and the lyrics are sort of really great. I think it's actually about the AIDS crisis, which was sort of quite prevalent in the news at the time. So this is a great album. It's, in my opinion, never bettered by Dream Theater. They've had quite a lot of albums, and I don't think any other album is as good as this one. And to be fair, I don't think there's any other album within the progressive metal sort of arena that's really as good as Images and Words. I mean, Dream Theater weren't really the first in terms of prog metal. Fate's Warning and Queensryche in the sort of 80s were really sort of leading the way. But you can't really mention progressive metal without thinking of Dream Theater. They influenced so many bands in the sort of 21st century, and who would always try but never surpass Images and Words. It's a great album. And I hope, if you haven't heard it already, I'm going to put the Spotify link down below in the description. And I really urge you to like it. If you like metal, if you like Iron Maiden, Metallica, if you like any of that sort of prog rock in the 70s, mixing them together. If you like Rush, I mean, Rush was a huge influence on Dream Theater. That all of the guys were big fans of Rush, and you can tell that with a lot of these songs. But there's a little bit more added crunch, a little bit more added of that sort of that thrash metal and that speed and power metal from the sort of late 80s into the early 90s that probably were really influential as well in this album. And it's a real melting pot of styles, which sometimes doesn't work, but in this case it absolutely does work. So that's my review of Dream Theater's Images and Words. Right, I've drank this beer and I've had a few sips as with the reviews going. So let's get some scores, shall we? Welcome back. Scores are in for Style, Control, Damage and Aggression. I have no idea where they get these titles. I know that Pomona Island really like to, they use little quotes from films and things like that. I'm not quite sure where that's from. If anyone knows, please let me know in the comments. But again, Style, the Dream Theater album's got lots of style, lots of control, but there is that damage and aggression as well. That is the Metallica link with a sort of softer, yes, Rush sort of style. Let's get some scores. First things first, AROMA. It's got lovely, lovely tropical notes, all really well balanced with a sort of mango and pineapple with grapefruit, papaya, passion fruit, a little bit of citrus in there. Really nice aroma. So I'm giving it a 15 out of 20. Appearance, it's a lovely hazy yellow IPA, as you would expect. You can see that nice lace in the glass. There's a little bit of a head, but it's not retained too much. But I'm giving it a 8 out of 10 for appearance. Then we've got flavour. Well, I think this is probably one of the best Pomona Islands I've had actually. Really, really well balanced, like the aromas. You've got the mango, you've got the pineapple, then you get the sort of the little bit of bitterness or the sharpness, I would say, from a sort of grapefruit, more the pink grapefruit. But it's, overall it's very low in bitterness. It's got a nice mouthfeel. I'm giving it a 35 out of 40 because I think it's great balanced in terms of an IPA. Then we've got value for money. 4 and a bit quid can. I'm giving it 8 out of 10. It's got lots of hops in it. There's lots of ingredients. As I mentioned, we've got Simcoe, we've got Strata, we've got Citra, we've got Mosaic. It's got 4 different types of hops in it, and that really sort of makes it, I think, a reasonably good value for money. And then my overall experience, well, I'm giving it 15 out of 20. This is a sort of beer that I would like to drink on a regular basis. If every craft beer tasted like this, it would be perfect. Very well balanced, low bitterness, a little bit, it's quite dry, which I really like in a beer. Nice mouthfeel, and it just works. The whole thing just works as a great package. And so 15 out of 20, I think, is a good score for overall experience. Tossing those scores up, we are getting an 81 out of 100. It's an Iron Maiden beer, and I think 81 is a highly recommended beer. So if you see this one in your bottle shops, give it a try. Pomona Island do lots of different beers. We've tried maybe 2 or 3 on this channel. This is the best so far, in my opinion. But if you see Pomona Island, they are a well-renowned brewery. Give them a go. 81 out of 100. It's an Iron Maiden beer, the original and best heavy metal band, and highly influenced by Dream Theater. So until the next review, keep on rocking.